All right, it should be working. Probably. We'll try to make sure. Don't know if it'll play on this page with this weird thing.
Right, it should.
Okay, it's working good enough. There's audio and some sort of other stuff. And so, yeah, I'll live with that. So, yes, it's a Saturday morning and 10 o'clock. So, just so I would make the room that I'm kicked out of. So, I'll just make another version of the one they won't let me participate in. Anyway, seems fair. So we do have a couple of stupid comments, and one of them's probably just going to be a huge distraction. Um, just it's like the Puro bad evidence thing. Just keep throwing crappy, junk science, and force me to waste a bunch of time debunking the junk. Um, instead of just answering the questions I've asked or addressing the points I've made. Um, and imply that I've somehow left something out when the truth obviously is they leave all the details out, especially out of subjects like gravitational lensing. They leave out all the details, how the gravity is, incredibly weak in these circumstances. Um, you know, that it bends the wrong way, light, nothing. They're the ones leaving out details. So anyway, just so dishonest. But what are you going to do? That's the world we live in. A bunch of dishonest propagandists. Something caught my eye, and I thought I'd share it with you. Well, that's probably not going to be any good. Alien science, quantum entanglement, and the key to gravity. Phoenix theory. Well, that doesn't sound good at all. So, well, after I'm done with this, we can go there, I suppose. I say, so this guy says, I fully understand that gravity lens is the wrong type of lens. Okay, so he's just conceding a simple point they keep leaving out, which is, this traditional notion of bending light to a focus doesn't work with gravity. You explained it in a clear way, makes perfect sense. So then this asshole Mark Salbion, who I believe is the mindless cunt marbles guy, does this bullshit. And yet that wrong shaped lens, the same way that bends less on the outside and bends more on the inside. So he's accepting the premise, and yet he won't address the facts. He's just going to say something stupid. Still does the exact same thing. And your theory behind that is what? How do you explain that it does the exact same thing? How do you explain that this lens, I can invert this lens and it does exactly the same thing? How do you explain how that would be possible? What's your theoretical explanation how the two lenses can do exactly the same thing? Yeah, you don't provide that. Those are your missing details, his arguments leave critical details out. So again, I didn't leave any details out. It's just absolutely bullshit. I've made clear assertions that you either debunk the individual assertions or you don't. You either prove that they're not true or you don't prove it. But I mean, this is just nonsense. So he links me to this garbage website again. The same garbage website he's linked to twice before that I've pointed out is a garbage website. And yet he keeps saying this is the truth. This garbage website has the truth. So he goes out and he finds this junk science on some forum page or some other jerky thing, and he says that's where the truth is. So all the physicists don't know the truth, all the ecologists don't know the truth, but these assholes do over here on a page that isn't formatted so you can even read it on the internet. They're so technically advanced as a civilization, these special aliens he links to, that their web page doesn't even display, on a HTML browser properly. Yet they know the truth. It's quite funny. So anyway, this is the main page of his junk science page, and so we'll just go through a couple of the statements, and you're just, how do you go anywhere with that? So the lens is basically, they made one out of acrylic. Now, we don't get to know the details of how they milled the lens. Did they mold the lens? We don't get any of those details. But obviously, see, milling's a problem. If you mill a lens, it leaves the milling marks, which ends up meaning you're creating one of those Fresnel kind of lenses where you can create a lens out of a bunch of centric lines, circles, and it'll be flat, but it'll still be a lens. So you have to be careful to avoid errors, see, and covering up something, hiding the truth, which again, like I said, this is their game. They're claiming I'm hiding some sort of truth or not providing all the information I know, when we know they're the ones doing that. They're the ones manipulating things to create a result. That's not what I'm doing. All right. So there, let's just read this one paragraph. Is part again. Maybe they're foreigners. They don't speak English. Written horribly. So anyway, pure-sex lenses. 2 pure-sex lenses were milled. Okay, so they're milled. So just understand, you have to polish it after you mill it. Anybody, like, say if you're working with wood and you use the little cutters, to cut a pattern into a round piece of wood on a milling machine. You have to sand it afterwards, because if you don't, it has a whole bunch of square little angles in it. So it's full of little angles of cut marks. So it's not, you have to polish it afterwards if you want a smooth line. But anyway, so that's already a problem. They should have milled a template and then poured the lenses, with acrylic. But anyway, let's play along. We're milled to yield deflection proportional to 1 over B. Now, it should be 1 over R. None of this B stuff is relevant. This B is not a concept. So all there is in gravity is the radius of the object is used because the radius contains the mass, essentially. And so the surface gravity will be proportional to the mass and proportional to the radius. So whatever this B thing is, not relevant. Denotes impact perimeter from the center. There's none of that means anything. There's no impact perimeter from the center. There's the radius. Okay. And again, it doesn't matter, because for all objects, the same rule applies. That's like the inverse square law, right? You don't sit there and say, the inverse square law has a rate of change, and that's all it means. It's a rate of change, and so all you need is a number for your rate of change. You don't need this B thing. And so the point is that as you get away from the surface gravity, that's your 0 point, your strongest gravity. And all you're really saying is every time you increase the distance by that R number, okay, you have the amount of gravity. So that's the R rule. Now, if it was the inverse square rule, it would mean every time you double the distance, there's only 1/4 of the gravity. So the gravity gets weak very, very rapidly. So that means it's a really strong slope, okay, right at the beginning. And then it just goes forever as almost zero, almost zero, almost zero, almost zero. But anyway, the impact perimeter from the center. So the impact perimeter would probably be the same as the surface, but who cares? Using Einstein's formula for the gravitational deflection by mass, m, deflection, you don't need any of this. It's the inverse square law, and Einstein's formula is not. Einstein's formula is 1 over r instead of r squared. That's all we're talking about here. You don't need all of this crap. The effective masses of the lenses were, see, the effective masses. As again, just more nonsense. So they made 2 lenses, 0.28 and 0.56, the mass of the Earth. Now, why would you do that? I mean, isn't that an arbitrary choice? So of course, so because what the game they're playing is they're milling the center out. You know, it's not milled, and they're just saying whatever the center is, I'll give that a gravity, and then I can justify whatever angles I put on this side. That's all they're doing. And so we know the slope in a galactic lens. We know that slope is incredibly not very slopey. Okay, because it's a gigantic thing, and you're talking about hundreds of thousands of light years of distance. And over that huge amount of distance, there's going to be a very large reduction in the gravity because the object itself doesn't have any gravity. Let's understand again, this is the stuff they leave out. The stuff they leave out is that if I have 3 galaxies in a cluster, and I'm going to say they're making gravity, the truth is they're not making that much gravity because they're, you know, first you can't even put them in you can't make them into spheres because they're not spheres. And when you put even 3 spheres into a thing, and then you draw a circle around it and say that's going to be my mass, you have to add up all the empty space with the active space and recognize that it's incredibly undense as an object. It doesn't have much gravity. The sun is 1 million times bigger than the Earth, and yet the gravity on the surface of the sun is only 8 times greater than the Earth. 1 million to, 1 million to 8. That's the ratio. So you have to understand the sun is incredibly undense compared to the Earth. All right. I mean, well, anyway, it's just their bullshit. So this is their justification for the angle they put on this lens, which is not the right angle for a galaxy. I mean, you have to concede. I mean, this playing with the Earth's diameter, all this stuff, this has nothing to do with a galactic lens. The diameters of both lenses were 24 centimeters, and that's another arbitrary number. So they just play the Lorentz game. So what they're saying is the slope starts very strong here, and depending on how wide I make my lens, I can just change the slope. So the bigger I make the lens, the slope is slower. And if I make a little tiny lens, then the slope will be very severe. So it's just arbitrary. Their profiles were calculated following Sidney Loeb's American Journal of Physics, whatever this is. The link is a dead link, so can't go find out what rule from Babelville they're applying. But just bullshit. So anyway, so let's go to the might as well just play the video because that's the most interesting little bit, right? I think I have the video already loaded. Maybe not. All right, well, we just go to the movie. So let's do, movie 3. So they ended up putting 2 lenses next to each other, doing this kind of crap for some bullshit reason. Like space makes double lenses, which it doesn't do. But anyway, but I'm the one leaving stuff out. Oh. Okay. So, well, yeah, this is probably the best thing to play. Because it's closest to getting to the point. Push it faster. So that's it. That's the best they could do. They got this lens, they got this whole setup, and the best they could do is this 5 seconds of video. They couldn't do even in slow motion or something. And the guys actually say push it faster. You're saying, why would you say push it faster? That doesn't make any sense. You want to push it slower. So they have a cue ball running down a little line. Now, what's obvious right from the start is you can see they're not really looking straight down at the cue ball. They have the lens at an angle. And yes, regular optical lenses will do that. If you put them at an angle, you'll get all kinds of weird reflections because what you start to do is see right through the glass again. And they'll also be getting internal reflections. So what they're leaving out is gravity doesn't have internal reflections. You can't bend the light, bounce it off the gravity. So the gravity can't make any internal reflections at all. That's verboten. And gravity doesn't have a side. So you can't play this angular game where I can change the tilt of the gravity and therefore create a new angle for the light to reflect at. So they're the ones leaving something out. I'm not the one leaving something out. They're the ones leaving something out. That they're exploiting a lot of artifacts created by surfaces. Gravity doesn't have any surfaces. There's no surface to the gravity lens. It's not diffracting light. The lens is. The lens is bending light, just bending it. It's not bending it this way. It's not slowly bending something. It's bending it sharply on surfaces. And that's a huge difference between these two things. And they're just exploiting that fact to play a game, to say, look, this is how lensing works. This isn't how lensing works. Lensing doesn't work this way. So they're just being really deceptive. And he accuses me of leaving something out. So just play it again and pause it at some good point. So you can see that the line doesn't go through the center. So you'd know that if the pool ball was going straight underneath this lens, right? If it's rolling straight underneath it, you'd see the pool ball in that little center thing, because that's no lens. That's flat glass, flat plastic. So in the center, you'd see the ball go by, and you never see the ball go by, because the ball isn't under the lens. They have it at an angle. Okay. So they've juiced the experiment to create the illusion, to create an illusion. And again, the illusion is being created out of our internal reflections. What's really happening is the one side that you're seeing over there is an internal reflection inside the lens. If they had perhaps drilled out the center, instead of having it solid material, and maybe painted it black, that might have destroyed any possibility of these internal reflections. But it's a gimmick, a toy. So you saw the ring there, right? It's ideally this program doesn't let me go frame by frame, which is really sort of annoying. So I should have loaded in the other program. So my mistake for doing that. Oh, well, you saw it. Big fat ring, by the way. All right. And we know in galaxies, these proportions aren't going to allow for that big fat ring. So I can make this, regular optical lens do really bizarre things by putting stuff the wrong distance from it, And so that's not evidence of their theory being right, that something 5 billion years away is lensing something 10 billion years away. This isn't matching that theory at all. And again, understand that when you move to things, when things are close, light comes in from all kinds of angles from every location. So you were picking up a whole bunch of rays of light from this one piece of stuff. So one little particle on here would be shooting light in all kinds of angles that would be hitting the lens in all kinds of places. But the further away you go, the only rays you get from that point are now parallel rays. Because any of the ones that bent a little, they're not going to get here. So in a sense, the light becomes more and more parallel the further away you go. And the experiment becomes less and less capable of producing weird effects, where you just happen to have the light going in at the right angle to create an artifact that gets to your eye. Because now it's all parallel rays. And so the parallel rays have to be bent to a focus to be seen. And they're just not seen. So the further away an object is, the more dependent it is on precise angles of refraction that have to do with the further away you go from the center, the more dependent you are on there being more bending. So the further away from the center, the more bending you need, because all the rays are coming in parallel from the object. And that's how it really works. I mean, those are facts. He's not disputing those as facts. He's just propagandizing and then calling me somebody who's hiding the truth, when obviously they're hiding the truth. They're hiding the truth in this experiment that they didn't line this up the right way. They tilted the lens. Tilted it. That's what they did. They cheated the experiment. Camera, tilted lens thing are tilted camera lens thing. You know, a fake angle. They weren't straight up. They did this. And he calls me hiding. No, fuck you. You're the cheater. You're on the side of the cheaters, not me. And this website is a demonstration. Like I said, it's. Let's go to his original link, and I'll just show you. It's just because you see how poorly formatted the pages he links to. All right, so we'll look at the lens image first. All right, so the text goes right off the page. So look how many times smaller I have to make the print to see it, right? So twice as small. It's horribly formatted. Then, and they have this image, so you can see this little plastic lens with a big slope here. Yeah, so it's pretty slopey, but it's also very slopey out here, where gravity lenses aren't going to be anywhere near that slopey out there. So you have to sort of understand that if this is where you started on the surface, straight up and down line, strongest gravity. Just one radius away, you're already at half that. And then one more radius away, you're 1/4 of that. And one more radius away. So that is just the Earth's diameter. Just go an Earth's diameter away. Well, it's an Earth radius, actually. So just 2 diameters away from the Earth, you're already at 1/16. Just 2 diameters away, you have 1/16 the amount of gravity. And, you know, 2 diameters don't get you even an eighth of the way to the moon. It doesn't get you hardly anywhere. I mean, it's one, yeah, it's probably like an eighth of the distance to the moon. So you're already cut your gravity to 1/16, and you're not even you haven't even gotten to the moon yet. That's how fast the gravity wears out. So think of magnets. Magnets are only strong here close in, very strong. Out here, nothing, absolutely nothing. You can't even find it. I don't even know I have magnets in my hand out here. And it's out here that the lensing is happening. Lensing isn't happening right here next to a surface anywhere. Okay, this is the big lie that they keep selling. And again, a cluster of galaxies, right? This is their cluster. And there's galaxies in here. Remember, there's a ton of empty space in there. Plus, there's a bunch of empty space in the galaxies themselves. The surface of a galaxy, say if this was a galaxy and it's laid on its side, you know, flat, the gravity out here is minuscule. Absolutely minuscule. I mean, 0.000000000000001 meters per second compared to Earth's gravity. Incredibly little tiny gravity out here because it's not a solid object. A cluster of galaxies or a galaxy, it's not a solid object. There's a ton of empty space in it, lots more empty space than suns. If I put more empty space in the Earth than there is Earth, that is, I put 100 times the size, you know, the Earth, I put empty space inside the Earth, right, and make it big and full of empty space, you can figure out, right, that the gravity is going to be really weak. You can figure that out, can't you? So anyway, this is just such a fucking hoax. So, and look at their own illustration. All right, so here they are demonstrating, see, that this is supposed to be an object where 2 objects are being created by that little funky one there. So it's not even in the center of the lens, which is a requirement. You really can't do this. Again, this idea of tilting gravitational lenses. You can't do that. Gravity doesn't tilt. Can't change it. It's the same everywhere, you know, in the sphere. You can't change the amount of gravity. So the rule is it should be in the middle between those 2 objects for us to see it. And it's really theoretical, absolute nonsense to say that one little object is somehow affecting this gravity thing. So the real argument is they say there's another lens next to this other third object. So what they're saying is these 2 objects are mirror images of each other, and that the real object is here in the middle and you can't see it. And there's another object in the middle that you can't see, whatever it is, the magic object, that has this other object going around it or something. So the other object is superfluous somehow. At least that's somebody's theory, not their theory. But again, just look at the way they drew it. Quasar, far away. Light going out to the outside where the gravity is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. The further out you go, the weaker the gravity gets. Yet the deflection has to be more and more and more to get to the object. So here they have it drawn exactly like this lens. And yet they're saying it's this lens. I mean, the inverted lens. Okay, you know, where's the honesty in that? How is that not leaving something out? You have more bending further away, and yet you're claiming the lens doesn't do that. I mean, it's just so dishonest. Here it is again. Here's the drawing. See this little part here? Can you see that? It's little, but they've done exactly the same thing. More bending on the outside. I mean, how is that not leaving some facts out? The magic facts where somehow the thing that has the no slope is creating the biggest change, and the thing with the most slope is the least change. How do you turn the whole physics upside down, the rules upside down, and get away with it? Well, anyway, there's just no point. I mean, obviously, I made the points. You know, just no. They don't want the truth. They want to live their lie, and they want to defend their liars, and that's all there is here. There's nothing else going on. They are religious kooks, just basically saying, I'm a Christian. You're not going to convert me into being a Muslim, and you're certainly not going to convince me to be a rationalist and say those are fairy tales. No hope. They're belligerently religious. No, whatever. You've already posted this 3 times. I've responded to it 3 times. Till you demonstrate it's not pseudoscience, till you show me something with some sort of integrity that I can take a shot at, somebody who has a reputation, let's say, even you, until you have an account that has some sort of like reality to it, where you can embarrass yourself and I can embarrass you for posterity for what you've done. Fuck you, posting this crap 3 times now. Fuck you. All right. So that's it for comments. Done again. Let's see. So we'll see what other subjects there are. See what if there's anything in the subscriptions. Oh, I have to go to the other guy's wacky video. That's true. The useless, whatever. No doubt more useless crap. Solar eclipse part 2. Well, I don't know if that's terribly interesting. Oh, he did this, whatever it is, his dissident science room. I didn't watch that. I'm sure it's quite horrible. More leaving. This is a guy leaving stuff out. You know, tons of stuff. The de-Hilster lever outer. Let's just see what this crap is.
Production company, not an entertainment company. We have a
So did I go here? How come he put a time code in the video? Let me see if he put that time code in there. Maybe he thought there was no time code and there was a time code. Let's see. I didn't see a time code. Yeah, he put a time code in. So I don't know what game he's playing. This doesn't look very important. Phoenix.
new way of doing physics based on quantum entanglement, and we want to use it to develop the cutting edge of real, highly advanced propulsion and energy technologies, well beyond anything.
Gee, this is really convincing, isn't it? I'm on your side. Look, I'm about motors and batteries and electricity. We want to do more of that. Yeah, sure you do. Don't we all? What is this thing? the mobile tin hat, or the whatever, hyperburloid tin hat. Yeah, toroidal tin hat. It's a toroidal tin hat. Oh, I have to get my one of them.
That's ever been done before. To get involved, invest, and learn more about the theory, visit our website at www.hoverbrothers.com. Hover Brothers is a co-ed, multiracial, multicultural.
Oh, isn't that just swell? It's really important that it be all that multi-sexes and multi-races and people with long hair and short hair. It's really important that it does all of that. That's so special. We steal money from anybody. That's all he's really saying. As long as your money is like sort of American, we'll take it.
Multi-oriented, diversity-embracing international collaboration on future space technologies.
Yes.
In 1895, one of the world's foremost authorities on science and technology.
I love this. They just put on the dead man suit, right? So they just, it's so cool, right? People can just pull a dead man out of the ground, put him on, and say, look, I'm the dead man now. See, all the great things the dead man did, I did. No, that didn't happen. You're not the dead guy.
Lord Baron von Kelvin famously remarked, I can state flatly that heavier than air flying machines are impossible. Just
right. We know why people made mistakes in the past. I mean, but in part the conclusion wasn't incorrect, because the gimmick you can use to overcome your gravitational problem. And it's a gimmick, right? Without the atmosphere, those flying machines aren't going to work anymore. And then you're just stuck with rockets, you know. And I don't think he was arguing that you can't create an asteroid going 27,000 miles a minute or whatever that'll fly through the Earth's gravity. So it's really taking somebody kind of out of context.
8 years later, in 1903, two brothers who owned a bicycle company in Ohio and happened to have just the right physics model were able to prove the entire...
Well, again, it's more of a chemistry model than a physics model. That's just the truth. I mean, flying in the atmosphere is more chemistry. You know, it's like making a submarine in a way. It's buoyancy. It really isn't, you know, it isn't physics. It's water physics. So anyway, well, this is obviously a waste of my time. Just letting you know, you're wasting my time. Something caught my eye I thought I'd share with you. This isn't science. You're just showing me, oh, look, there's some more propagandists trying to make money selling bullshit. Thank you. I already know there's a bunch of those out there. I'm looking for somebody who's talking the truth. Link me to the truth speakers. That's what I want. People who are doing the truth thing. Those links I want. The honesty thing. All right, so that was pretty much as usual a waste of time. All right. So let's see what the comments. Oh, in min butt. So there we go. The best you can do is, again, steal somebody's name and do your little whatever it is, trolley spam. That's the best you can do. Oh, and then do some anti-Semitic stuff. Oh, you're so cool. I bet you so wish you had a little swastika as an icon instead. But troll accounts can't edit the icons, I guess. You know, fuck it. It's so fucking pathetic. Why the human race allows itself to be embarrassed by these assholes. Let's see. What the fuck is this? I can't block people anymore? Oh, it's the wrong one I'm clicking. Ah, yes. Hide user from planet Earth would be the right thing to say. Ah, and the other comment was retracted before I could read it. I should have read it first. Disappointing. I've missed out. Damn. All right, so that's enough of that. So no commenters worth Inspire nothing. Thank you for inspiring nothing. Being absolutely useless. It's so cool of you. Okay, so I did get a little further into the Sean Carroll interview, and yeah, they were what the hell did they waste time talking about? Oh shit. I probably wrote it down here. Oh, it was all psychobabble stuff. You know, keep positive. You know, you can't think about being robots. You can't do this. You've got to be affirmative and positive in life. And they're all about their stupid yoga and their life awareness training and all these, you know, I mean, it just sounds so fucking gay. Sorry, gay people. I meant like gay in the old style where gay people were like poofters and, you know, silly. Like they would, like, to be gay was to really be mocking a woman. And so you would take every attribute women had and hysterically over exaggerate it. So like the woman on the chair when there's a mouse on the floor, you know, going ooh with their panties up, the gay people would take that, multiply it by 100. And so, but yeah, that's sort of what this Joe Rogan is. He's like this he's such a fucking poofter. You know, not like not in his personal mannerisms so much, but in his jargon. I mean, even to say something like, you know, whatever it was, touchy-feely awareness training, you know, or something, whatever, awareness training, even the words awareness training. Whoa. I mean, that's so creepily jujube or something. That's like some kind of gay candy. I mean, I wouldn't eat that stuff even if it was even if it was underdog super energy pills. If they called it a jujube, I'm not eating it, man. Fuck you. You got to call food better words than that shit. I ain't eating that. I ain't eating no gummy bear. No, fuck you. Too fucking gay. It's not even gay, right? It's queer. There's a difference between gay and queer, so I probably should use the word queer. It's just so fucking queer. And I should just redefine the word queer to mean covered in cooties. Because that's really what it is. That's just cootie food. You want to get cooties? Go ahead, eat that shit. Go ahead. You want to have cooties? Talk bullshit about awareness training. Ooh. Anyway. So yeah, it was painful to watch. So I don't know whether they did a little more physics at the end, but it just isn't worth it. Way too much synthetic, cheap, artificial sweetener crap to be edible. Just totally unedible. All right. Now we'll move on. Well, we'll see if the commenters did anything. No, they didn't do anything, of course. Useless bags of shit. So we'll just make fun of David. That'll be fun. So let's understand. If David wasn't an anal little putsy girl, I would be in that physics room discussing physics with people instead of making this video making fun of David. Yeah. So just desserts, we'll call this. This is your just desserts, butthead. You little Nazi prick. You little hypocritical fucktard.
Okay, here I am. I'm sorry about the delay. There's always one little click I don't make.
You're boring already. All right, we'll jump ahead. That's fun.
On the major problems in mainstream science, quantum mechanics is one of them. And some people are asking me like, why is that? And I think the quantum eraser experiment is probably the best example of how quantum mechanics is just absolutely.
Well, there's so many versions of it though too, which is the problem. But yes, clearly it has these presumptions built into it. The magic crystal that creates two photons. La 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 la.
Screwed up.
To entangle photons.
Let me make sure. Watch here. get myself that.
Oh, let me jump ahead a little bit. Well, maybe I'll speed it up too. That'll help. David does talk a little slow. You know, lots of people do, so it's not the end of the world. But come on, hit the right button, Gary. So we'll zoom him up a little bit because yeah, it helps.
I'm offline here with my phone. I'll go forward. Theater mode. Oh, I love. Gosh, it's great now. All right, so we're going to talk about this, and before we start to talk about it, I want you guys to watch a video. So,
oh dear, I don't know if I want to do that.
Let's do it. Obviously, you have audio, so I'm going to switch over to this. I will put these. In fact, let me. My goodness, hello. I'm going to give you the link for it. I'll get the link for it.
Yeah, well, I've already played it
in the below. But for now, we're going to watch this because
yeah,
it's quite. When I first saw these, I really couldn't believe people get on and talk about this. This has over 1 million views. It has over 1 million views. This, but you got to listen to this thing. How absurd it is.
All right,
definitely in a paradigm shift. I have that article I wrote about that.
Oh, I'm so sick of this
article using time.
Paradigm shift bullshit. This is more just girly talk. You know, the world changes sometimes really slow. Sometimes it changes really fast. So in some respects, you know, we went through a big transition, let's say in the last 20 years. We went from a world that was sort of controlled and closed. Then this whole internet thing went hysterical. And what have we gotten out of it, though, unfortunately, right? The hope going in was the intellectuals will now control the world, right? Because the internet's full of these intellectuals who know how to communicate with this bits and shit. And so it was all the college people and all that. And then they sold it all out, you know, to Google, to ads and shystery and connivery and thievery, and to, you know, even now where we still get emails from some guy in Africa who needs your help to get his $1 million out of the bank. I still get those emails. I mean, it's how bad this is, right? So we just gave it to the junkers, and our whole system we can see is doing the same thing. Donald Trump is president. I mean, the idiocracy, the internet didn't empower the intellectuals. It empowered the idiots, you know, completely inverse circumstance. But yeah, so sometimes change is fast. Sometimes change takes hundreds of years. There's no paradigm shift.
The Thomas Kuhn's own Kuhn cycle.
I mean, even evolution, right? Darwin's theory, the change still hasn't happened. You know, it's so slow. The paradigm shift from magical poofing creation world to now, well, we've got to modify our religions to take into account for this fact that the world is 4 billion years old. You know, yeah. Where's the paradigm shift? Yeah, it doesn't exist.
So let's take a look at this. I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to unmute.
Great idea.
So maybe a little echo really quick, but then we're going to go forward and watch this until I can't stand it anymore.
All right, get to it already.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. Can reality be adjusted after events have occurred? That's the unsettling implication of the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment.
Yeah, so it is, you know, again, it's just quantum mechanics taken to preposterous extremes where we can jump back in the past and alter the reality and blah, blah, blah. And you can't do any of that crap. And it's just bullshit. And so it's just holding the lens crooked and saying, look, I can make funny images when I hold the lens crooked. So can space.
We recently talked about the weird results of the single particle double slit experiments. They imply some startling things about the nature of reality.
Well, again, so they don't imply any such thing because, again, this whole experiment is the surface experiment, and the surfaces don't care whether there's 100 photons going by or 1 photon going by. They're going to interact with them just the same. So just doesn't make any difference.
Today, I want to talk about an additional, possibly even stranger version of this experiment, whose results force us to reconsider the nature of causality itself. Now, this episode isn't going to make a lot of sense unless you've seen the first one, so go ahead and watch it if you haven't already. Oh, wait. Okay, so the single particle double slit experiment suggests that things may not exist as well-defined, even real particles, in that strange interim between creation and detection. There's a fuzzy space in which we don't know the particle's location.
So we do, though. So the truth is that we can't aim a photon. So if we can aim one, that is explicitly shoot it in one vector and be sure which way it went, then this would all be, we could end this whole wacky conversation. But we can't. Again, it's just the way photons are created inside tiny little atoms. We can't point atoms accurately enough to say which way the photon's going to come out exactly. So we don't have enough control over photons to aim them. But we do know that if I cover both those slits, none of the photons are going to go certain places. No, they can't. They can't possibly get out of the laser in those directions. And that the photons that do hit will all have a vector. You'll be able to trace their path rationally back to the laser. There will not be any irrational photons.
Path. The Copenhagen interpretation will tell us that in this space, a particle is only its wave function, a distribution of possible properties. It's a probability wave that does all the usual wave-like stuff, like making interference patterns.
And making new universes and all that kind of, yeah. Don't we know that photons make universes? Of course they do. They have all of that mass in them, and they create whole new universes over and over and over again. Many, many universes with every photon. Every photon creates 1 billion universes every time it hits something. You fuckers suck.
Until something happens to collapse it.
So, and again, he's talking about photons, and he's showing the image of electrons. So again, who's leaving out details or fucking with the truth? Oh, that's right, this guy is. Yeah.
At that point, the Copenhagen interpretation tells us that a true transition happens between wave and particle. But is that right? And if so,
yes, none of your silly guesses are correct, because none of your silly guesses account for physics, which means that no object has a surface. Nothing has a surface. There's no such thing as a surface like steel or something. They're like brick wall surfaces on the nuclear lab. There's no bricks in nuclear physics. Atoms aren't made out of bricks, idiot. So their surfaces are a mixture of little bits in magnetic tension. Little things magnetically tied to each other, separated by a lot of empty space. That's what a surface is, physicist. And if you shoot photons through that next to, and here's another get a clue for you. Okay, I'll explain it to you in like grammar school English, but see, there's no such thing as being next to the surface. You either go through the surface or you don't. But that's it. The surface doesn't have a next to.
What really causes this transition? Does observation of the particle's location force the universe into settling down and deciding which particular reality we happen to be in? To head off it.
So it's just amazing that there's serious people like pretending anyway. They're supposed to be sort of serious. I mean, obviously he's doing the t-shirt, I'm a regular guy thing. I'm a regular physics man. I'm cool physics. I have a Twitter account. Yeah.
The wild metaphysical giddiness, I want to say right now that there's absolutely no reason to believe that observation by a physicist is better at collapsing wave functions than observation by an electronic detector.
So let's understand that observation is a bullshit word, because they've turned observation into interfering, and are terminating. And with photons, that's the only way you can observe a photon, is you terminate it. You you consume it, perhaps for readmission at some later point. But that's how it works. You have to absorb the energy. The energy has to be transmitted through a whole Rube Goldberg cycle of tipping points. So you create something like like a photodetector. Photodetector takes a bunch of electrons and puts them in an energized state, which is they're tippable. So in this state, you can't knock them over. But in this state, oh yeah, you can tip them over really easy. So it's like putting leverage on the electron. So now it's way up in the air and it's swinging on a pole. And if you just barely blow on it, it'll tip over. So you take a bunch of electrons and you put a bunch of voltage into them. You go oh, you put them all on sticks. So now they're all wobbly. All right. So now you let the photon fly through the wobbly electrons. And a photon hits a wobbly electron. And what it does is it knocks it over. And when it does that, though, all the wobbly electrons are close to each other. So when this one falls over, it makes this one fall over. It makes this one, so it dominoes. So there's not a whole bunch of energy that you put in the energy. You put voltage into the electrons. So you made them really easy to tip. And so you created the dominoes. And now you just have to barely breathe on one domino and all the dominoes fall, which looks like a lot of energy, but no, you already put the energy in by dominoing the electrons. But that's how you detect a photon. You don't detect a photon because it went by an electron, like whoosh, zooming by. No, 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 no. You have to hit it. Being played.
Yeah. Or a house plan for that. We'll talk about what observation really means at a later point. But it's still pretty interesting.
We'll do that later. After I've got you totally confused and you won't even understand what I'm saying anymore. I'll just sound like blah, 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 blah. Then I'll explain the simple stuff to you after your brain has completely left the building.
To see what happens if we try to observe the wave function at different points in the experiment.
All right, we try to look at something we can't see, okay, with the magic, look at it with the magic seer. So instead of doing it the only way you know you can see it, which is to terminate the electron, to create the tipping electron so you can detect the energy of the photon. So you have to understand, it's called a photomultiplier, right? But the device doesn't really multiply the photon. It multiplies the electron's force, the tipping action. So it's kind of a chain reaction. So I should have said it this way, like there's electrons coming on poles in all directions. And when you hit one, you hit a whole sequence of them. So you amplify the amount of tipping that takes place. So it's like you have one domino hits two dominoes, and then two dominoes hit four dominoes, and then four dominoes hit eight dominoes. So it creates a chain reaction. So it's a photo chain reaction creator. And that's the only way you can measure the existence of a photon. So you can't do it any other way. You can't see any wave function. You can't detect it without destroying it. You have to consume it to see it. That's the whole point. You have to consume it to see it.
History of the experiment is that very particle-like things appear to traverse both slits simultaneously.
See.
I do want to say just now that before you guys go bonkers, we have answers to this. We have real answers to this. So for those people who have...
Well, he really doesn't have answers for it. His answer is some silly notion that there's no charge, which is preposterously silly, and that there's two kinds of particles, little ones and then super little ones, and that go faster than the speed of light. So catch-22 all over the place.
I've never seen this. It's important that people watch this. So I'm not going to go read the whole thing for sure. I just got to get to...
How come draft science is there? Isn't that, I mean, that's really irritating. Somebody steals my name. Oh, that's dissident science. Okay. Got paranoid for a minute. Are you seeing and hearing the video? Well, I guess they would be. They'd be telling you if they weren't. That's the kind of question you don't have to ask.
We've got enough information for those people who haven't seen it.
Oh, we'll see if my commenters have anything to say. Hello, Gary. It's piss. Well, that's incredibly interesting. No point in blaming Einstein. Again, it's like that's like blaming the first guy who said, "Wow, life is weird. This planet's fucked up. We don't know how anything happens. Maybe a god did it." That guy is not to blame. The idiots today saying that's a good theory, those are the people to blame. Einstein was sitting there, nobody had a theory, and he came up with one that almost worked. So he's not guilty. The problem is it's clearly not a material theory in the sense that it's completely a God theory. a magical function within inside of planets and galaxies and other things. A magical function consumes this thing called space, and the other things realize the space is missing and fall into the bigger empty hole. So there was an empty hole next to them, but it got twice as empty, and the twice as emptiness forces them to move into that space. Now, that's a silly theory. I'm just saying on its face, that's not a very good answer. And so everybody should have said, no, that's not a very good answer. Let's not go with that. I love all electrons. Ever. Is it gay to like photons too? Spelled with an F. All right. Well, goodbye. Yeah, that's the only rational response to silly, tardy, crappy people is just to say, fuck off. Time wasters. Time wasting is a disgusting thing to do. Wasting people's time should get you put in prison. That should be the first crime, essentially, is time wasting. Fuck you.
Like you might expect of a wave. Physicists love a good mystery, and so have tried very, very hard to see which slit these particles actually travel through before they produce the famous interference pattern. Turns out the universe is onto us. Any experiment that determines unambiguously which slit the particle traverses destroys the interference pattern.
Okay, so that's a lie. They haven't done the experiments, first of all. See, he's implying that they've done a polarization experiment, and the polarization destroyed the experiment. We know, no, the polarizing film is modifying the photons. Yes, so yes, you've changed them by passing them through a material film. That's just that's the game. Polarizing filters change photons. They go in this way, they come out this way. They're altered by the process. That means they have to be consumed and readmitted. That's sort of the rule. It's an atmosphere. It's fucking with them. But anyway, more specifically, though, this always brings up the point that they're doing the experiment now with buckyballs, big clumps of atoms, 65 atoms, little bally thing. Those you can bounce photons off of without fucking them up. Do you have some hope of telling what slit they went through, because you can detect which slit they went through, and they haven't done it. So they aren't saying, well, you can't do it. They're overtly saying you can't do it, and they haven't even tried. So who's leaving information out? Me or them? Did he put in here, look, here's a list of all the times we've tried the experiment? Because there is no list. Okay, the detector experiments are all a fallacy. Those never took place.
Instead, particles land in simple clumps, one for each slit, as though they were traveling as single particles the whole time.
And again, something that wouldn't happen anyway, right? Because we already know that single slits diffract light. So even if you could somehow break the two-slit function, you can't break the single-slit function. Detecting isn't going to break the fact that it's a single slit. And the only way, again, if you put a single slit and you throw buckyballs through it and you hit them with a few photons, you won't ruin the pattern. You'll fudge it a little, but you won't ruin it.
This is even true if you place detectors on the far side of the slits, after the wave particle thin should have already been interfering with itself. It's like the wave function is collapsing retroactively, as if the universe is saying, okay, guys.
So again, the preposterous possible answer, when there's rational possible answers, that yes, the film is fucking with the photon, and it has nothing to put it in front, put it behind. It doesn't matter, because either one, you will change the path of the photon.
You can figure out which way you went. No more funny stuff. Better pretend like you were particles that whole time. But there's a huge problem with this interpretation. It's impossible to make these measurements without messing up the wave. The interference pattern happens because the waves emerging from each slit are what we call coherent, which is a fancy way of saying that the relationship between the waveforms emerging from the two slits, so the locations of peaks and valleys, is predictable and stays consistent as the waves move forward.
Well, again, it's one wave. So let's see. So they always do this too. They know, they're the ones who know that it's a fact that an individual photon, one photon, does this. Okay, one photon at a time, you'll get the pattern. So any of this crap about phase and all this crap has nothing to do with it, because we know it's one photon, and one photon can't be out of phase with itself. So they ought to always talk about the experiment using examples of one photon at a time, to be fair to the experiment, to not leave anything out. That should be how they describe it, instead of implying, okay, this idea that two different photons are interacting.
This coherence is what allows the waves to produce the interference pattern in the first place.
Okay, the wave. So we know there's not waves before the photon gets there. There's one wave. Okay, and if you can hit one wave for the single slit experiment or one wave for the double slit experiment, this wave doesn't care whether there's two slits here or one slit here. This wave, this one photon, doesn't change any.
When you place some device in the path of either wave, you mess with this coherence and so affect the pattern that reaches the screen. By the way, the double slit experiment where you try to determine which slit is traversed is called a which way experiment. And if the test is done on the far side of the slits, it's called a delayed choice experiment. Physicists hate being outsmarted by the universe. So they've come up with clever ways to measure which way the particle traveled while still preserving coherence.
So let's understand. He just called it a particle. It's a wave. It's a particle. It's a wave. It's a particle. So this is all just such bullshit too. Just bullshit.
Coherence. I'm going to talk about the most famous, performed in 1999. This experiment.
So why isn't it performed again and again and again and done brilliantly and with, so everybody can see it? Yeah, that's right. Because it's a horse shit.
Made use of a very special type of crystal that absorbs.
Here, the very special type of crystal. Oh, okay. So this isn't already getting messy enough. We're going to introduce the very special kind of crystal. Oh, fuck. And we'll tell you what the very special kind of crystal is doing. So he's having a hard time explaining how two slits work, how two slits do what they do. But he's sure he knows how that crystal works, right? So they can't explain one slit, two slits very well. They're having a problem with it, having a problem keeping their explanations in the realm of rational. Yet he knows how that crystal works, that complex thing. Yes, horseshit.
An incoming photon and creates two new photons, each with half the energy of the original.
So, and by half the energy, that means half the frequency. So let's understand, you shoot a blue one in and you get two little red ones out or something, some kind of bullshit like that. So you send in an ultraviolet in and you get two red ones coming out this way. So ultraviolet in this way, little red ones out this way. That's the idea, which isn't too far-fetched. But the way they're going to say it, the reality is somehow those two little red ones are entangled.
These new photons are twins of each other. In fact, they're an entangled pair.
Ah, there we go. So he knows they're entangled. He can't explain the two-slit experiment accurately, and he's going to use the entanglement crystal to test the two-slit experiment. So this simple experiment, he's going to test it with his special entanglement crystal. Oh, that's not a problem. No, that's the way physics should be done.
So fundamentally connected in strange ways that we'll come back to. So place this crystal in front of the double slit to make coherent entangled pairs of any photons passing through. Send one of each pair off to the screen to produce an interference pattern.
All right, there you go. So somehow you used your magic crystal, have two entangled photons, and now you're both going to shoot them in the same direction, which is also kind of a tricky feat, but whatever, let's say they can do that. They should at least have them moving in coherent paths, but they don't even have that. So, I mean, this diagram obviously is very perverse. I wonder if they did it with a single slit. Oh, they couldn't have all this extra crap then. Yeah, that's right. Forget that idea. That's silly.
And use the other to figure out which slit the original photon passed through. Let's focus on detectors A and B here. Detector A lights up if the original photon passed through state A, and detector B lights up for state B. If we run this for a bunch of
Okay, folks, I'm going to interrupt here.
Ah, please. Yes, anything's better than this. So, I mean, obviously lots of problems here. Mirrors all over the place, blah, blah, blah. Photons traveling much longer distances than the other photon path. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense at all. Just a pile of crap. And yet they know they can follow these little photons. Now, they're not shooting one at a time or any of that kind of crap. They got a zillion of them going through, and they're doing a mathematical thing on saying how many blips went here and how many blips went there and blah, 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 blah. It has nothing to do with following individual photons.
And I'm going to start talking about what is actually going wrong in this, and how it's absolutely amazing to me how they go off and make these conclusions. So basically,
so we'll probably not agree on what's wrong with this experiment. So let's see what he says, because his complaints will probably not be my complaints.
There's a number of things going on. They can do an experiment where they're shooting the particles through the slits, and when they're shooting the particle through the slits, they can measure. They can put a detector before or after. If they put it after, what they say is it's still, oh my gosh.
You can't put a detector. So again, just understand, there's no way to detect a photon. So there's no detector. The detector consumes the photon, and you have to readmit it, which means it's not going to have the same momentum, angular momentum. It's not going to be moving in the same with the same directional momentum.
It's not doing it. What the idea is, I'm going to put a detector there, and I'm going to see which slit the particle went through. That was the whole idea. And when they put it ahead of it, then of course I'll know, because hey, it's going to go through that one. But if they put it behind it, it still seems to come with the same behavior of changing what they say, like going from a wave to a particle.
Just understand, they can't detect photons. So this is all just baby talk. You cannot possibly detect a photon without consuming the photon. That's quantum electrodynamics. Feynman would not disagree with that. Feynman would not say, yes, a photon can go past an electron and miss it, and the electron will somehow wobble or do something. No, that can't happen. You can't have a subtle interaction with a photon. There's no subtle interactions. You either completely interact or you don't interact. That's it. That's the rule for photons.
This history erasing experiment, the quantum erasing experiment, what they say then is that the way they explain that is that, oh, it's observing. So if you notice, he said, it doesn't matter if we observe it or if a detector observes it or a plant observes it. The truth of the matter, it absolutely does matter what they're using as the detector. That's one of the answers.
No, it absolutely doesn't. Is whatever detector they're using can only consume the photon. It can't detect it any other way. We only detect photons we consume. Our eyeball, our retina consumes them. And just like a photomultiplier, it consumes them by having them hit electrons in our retina and stimulate electrical current. That's how we detect them. Their energy is converted into an electron cascade, a chain reaction of electrons, just like the photomultiplier, and it creates a voltage that goes to our brain that says photon has arrived. And our brain can't detect single photons, by the way, our eyes. It needs to be hit more than once to cause the cascade of electricity.
Second answer is they don't know what photon is, because they have no model of a photon. They have no model or explanation to the particle wave duality. And guess what?
Well, that isn't terribly important either, because at least they are saying what they say a photon is, which is that somehow its energy is defined by frequency, and they'll concede that it appears to move in straight lines. Okay, unless wavical, unless it turns into a wave function. So anyway, let's see if there's any comments from the crap heads. Always looking at self. Well, that's an interesting name, but probably not an interesting character. We too dumb to understand universe, hence all unfinished holy theories. Okay. I don't think we're too dumb. That's my whole point. And people would be able to understand the truth if somebody was telling them the truth. But we have these liars as icons of our civilization, these fake intellectuals who are selling absolute horseshit because they're in the business to get paid for making people see unicorns. And it's very lucrative, and they get famous and get prizes and get all kinds of stuff for the more people they fooled into seeing a unicorn. And that's unfortunate. That's a poor choice people have made. And clearly the intellectuals are to blame because they're just turned into schemers. They don't give a fuck about truth anymore. It's just about what is a sellable lie. Hence all the unfinished holy theories, like quantum mechanics and bent space, just completely unfinished, no unification in sight, bad choices to glue yourself to completely different theories of fundamental function. One of them completely dependent on the existence of charge and magnetism. One of them completely dependent on the existence of some silly force called bent space. I'm serious. I think we lack the intellectual capacities to understand it. I think this is just absolute bullshit. I mean, obviously, I've already modeled it. So I obviously have the intellectual capacity. And the model's so fucking simple. I could explain it to a grammar school kid and he would get it. So don't tell, let's say you take somebody before they've been indoctrinated into bullshit, and I explain to them how, yes, there's these two forces. They're filtered. Magnets are a filter. They don't make energy. They filter energy. Guess what? The Earth is a filter. It doesn't make gravitational energy. It just filters it out of the fucking system. So that's why there's no, the Earth doesn't get lighter making gravity. That's why the sun can make gravity forever and ever and ever, and it never gets any smaller. It doesn't have to burn any fuel, no gasoline, no lithium batteries required, no nothing to create gravity. You don't have to break a single atom. I'm serious. Anyway, no, it's fun trying to figure it out, though. Whatever. No, it really isn't. I mean, yes, it's fun while you're figuring it out, but once you have figured it out, it's really fucking irritating because then you're just sitting there saying, how could everybody be so fucking goddamn stupid? I think our thinking is too holy to understand and solve. So he's saying the same crap. So this is like every one of these are just sock accounts and solve all the holes in all the theories. So I don't know. There's no fat lip porch monkey. I mean, why would it bother with you, you insane fucking racist kook? Go to hell and die. Die in hell and go to double hell. You fucking cunt. Just so sick of this. Ugh. People suck. God. Nuke them. Oh, just amazing. Who are these insane fucks? Why are they allowed to roam our fucking civilization free? This fucker should be in prison.
My father, in 2015, after 20-some years of looking at particle wave duality, my father came up with a solution to it. Is it the solution? I don't know, but when I saw it, I was floored.
Yeah. It's not the solution because he hasn't taken care of the classic flaws. Okay, Newton was offered opportunity to accept the Lesage version. I mean, it was from the originator, the Fontenay or whatever his name was, other French guy. And they just couldn't fix it enough because they didn't know enough about all this nuclear stuff. So they were stuck with kind of an asteroid theory. A bunch of little rocks are being thrown at other rocks. And then the problem is they'd say the rocks will bounce off, some of them, and little fragments will fly off, and they'll have heat problems, and they'll have this kind of problem. Because they didn't really understand the whole nuclear frictionless thing. They were in a world full of friction. They didn't really understand this frictionless thing. And, to some extent. I mean, obviously, Newton was able to imagine it because you could imagine throwing a cannonball off the Earth and having it, shoot it fast enough and it'll leave the gravity. But yeah, your father hasn't answered the drag problem. You can't, you got to deal with those problems in somewhere. He hasn't dealt with any of those. I mean, how can you move something through a field of particles that have energy, without hitting more in front of you than behind you?
For like a year and a half. And that really started us on the particle model. And guess what? We can explain all of this. And I'm not here. Remember, I told people who were here before.
No, so they don't explain all of this. They don't explain almost all of the classic problems. They don't even go near. And their explanation of things we already know exist, like charge, is to say charge doesn't exist, which is fundamentally retarded. I mean, there's so many experiments demonstrating the existence of the phenomenon of charge. You just can't erase it from the physics history.
I would talk a little bit about the particle model. Well, it's because we actually look at these things, because if you have a new model of the universe, you better be able to explain these things.
And you haven't. And again, you run away from the challenge, quite obviously, and, will take dissenters and treat them poorly, which is makes your name a lie. You're not a dissident scientist. You're a Nazi scientist. You're a fascist.
So what's going wrong here with the double slit experiments, with quantum erasing experiments? Well, they're making interpretations that are wrong. They're saying entanglement. What is entanglement? Entanglement to them is they're going to make a photon of half the power and send it through both slits, and they're both the same. They know about it.
Well, again, it's really not half the power. It's just half the frequency. So let's not pretend. Half the frequency. That means that a stream goes in at a certain rate, 10 per centimeter, you could say. And then two streams come out that are 5% per centimeter and 5 per centimeter. So it's just doing the conservation thing. You put a certain amount of energy in, 10 per centimeter, and you're getting 10 per centimeter out. You're just getting it in two different paths. That's hardly improbable.
I'm going to explain to you in our model what's really going on. And that mistake by them, because they don't know the difference between a photon or particles and light as a wave.
Right, and you don't know the difference. Because so another thing he thinks is that photons and electrons are the same thing. They call them G1s. When we know electrons are completely different than photons. Their behavior is completely different. They can be accelerated. They can be moved fast, move slow. Nothing like a photon, really. Very little like a photon. Can't possibly be called the same thing. It would be insane for somebody to say same thing.
Particle. That's the problem. And because they don't know that, they get all these weird things and interpretations that go on. For instance, this idea that, well, if I put the detector after, it still seems to be able to know that when you go through when I'm observing it. So it still knows that. And even though I didn't detect which one it went through, and we make sure they call it cohesive, that we're sending it through, and it's not, it still seems to make it change from a wave to a particle. The answer is so ridiculously simple. It's scary. But from that, then you get explanations, and I invite you guys to watch other ones, because you get articles or look up articles. When this came out, they were writing articles like this. No lie. No lie.
So I understand that one of the ways they do this experiment was with polarized film, this detection thing. And the problem with that is it's a bunch of lines. And if you shoot light at an angle at a bunch of lines, you can sort of understand if I take a jail, if I take a jail bars and I start moving it at an angle, the space between the bars disappears, and at some angle there's no space between the bars, therefore no photon. Yeah, so there's real physical flaws in using polarized film to do detection of photons coming out at different angles. Doesn't really work very well. Theoretically flawed.
There's a photon that's 10 billion years, 2 billion years ago that was let go. And because depending on where I look or how I look at it, who's observing it, it could go around a star one way, or it could go around the star another way. And they said, this happened. So I look at it 2 billion years later, and somehow that affects how it traveled around that star 2 billion years ago.
Right. I don't know how many people actually go for that in terms of physicists saying that's actually what's happening. That's just one of the paradoxes opened up by their bullshit. So like the twin paradox and other paradoxes, there's some paradoxes created and they're real. And I think they've been unanswered in the sense that they have to answer them with some sort of fake thing where, oh yeah, photons don't travel straight. They move to the future. They know when they're moving and they know they have to go towards the future. Some kind of crap like that.
Now, if you think quantum mechanics is not sick, is not in crisis, as Thomas Kuhn says, you have normal science, and you have models that model drift, you have then model crisis, you have then model revolutions, then a paradigm shift. And so what's happening here?
So again, this, unfortunately, I might as well read this stupid comment. I mean, I've gone over the perpetual motion thing already, the free energy thing, and explained it over and over, in the last 2 videos extensively. And here it just does it again. But it's like F full is to whatever that is. Who knows what that name means. So if we could build a machine which operates like the sun or Earth as a filter for gravity, it's not a filter for gravity, but it's a filter that causes, there to be the potential for gravity. Then we could have then we could have clean energy source. Yes, we could right now. If I shoot you into space, the truth is your atoms will remain compressed because they're already in space. See, from your atoms' perspective, they're in the big universe. They're not in things called water or air or all this kind of crap. They're always in space, ultimately. And other material things have to interact with them for them to interact. They interact with things locally. They don't interact with anything in the big universe. So they have to be hit by photons, and that's all they know is the photons hitting them, then the amount of photons hitting them. So I put a regular atom in space, it stays a regular atom, right? It doesn't just blow up or something because it's already in space and it's already being compressed by the force. The force has already pressurized it. See, but the only way you can realize energy is in the process of there being that movement or that compression. So if I could explode the atoms, then I got free energy, right? And we already know we can explode the atoms. It's called nuclear power. But the trick is it's dangerous. You got to do it right. But yeah, there's a ton of energy, free, in the sense it's so cheap, if you can figure out a cheap way to explode the atoms without irradiating yourself. So we already know the free energy is there. It's just the only way to get it is to compress and expand atoms. Okay, they're what the real thing that's getting compressed and expanded in the universe. All the other expansions and compressions are much more complicated versions of that. And as I've stated, there's lots of flywheel kind of circumstances you can take advantage of. Things where, yes, the flywheel has been built and something else moves the flywheel, and then you can steal the energy. And that's what we're doing with water. The environment pushes the flywheel of the water up into the atmosphere. We can collect it on its way down for free. We could collect it on its way up, which is like thermal. Essentially, that's what you're doing with the thermal thing, is you're taking advantage of the fact that the heat's rising, wants to rise, and you're taking advantage of that. So again, it's a cycle you're taking advantage of. But whatever. Cold fusion viable. Again, you don't have to do cold fusion because you already have this. It's the same. It's in a sense, it's a very similar process of taking advantage of atoms being expanded. That is, you either split them or combine them and you get the little bits flying off, the extra bits, or what you're collecting is heat. And so the very idea of cold fusion sort of doesn't make any sense, right? Because without the heat, there's no energy for us to collect. So in a sense, it's never going to be cold. So cold is sort of a lie. They're just saying colder than plasma hot. So don't be fooled by the word cold. And salt-based nuclear reactors, well, good luck with that, because guess what? They're just saying make it less hot. Less hot is where we can get more energy. No, less hot means you get less energy. So you gotta play with more stuff, more bigger volume, and it has less energy. Well, it's less radioactive, which is also a nice feature. But again, so then you're stuck with different efficiencies. But it's still the same thing. You're still just trying to steal the fact that when you turn one atom into two atoms, or you turn two atoms into one atom, that you always have these leftover bits, and they're the bits you're collecting.
As that these people, because they don't have a model, are actually talking about they can't justify 7 people looking at the same photon that would be coming from somewhere so if I look at it, it will go around the left side of the star, and if you look at it through a telescope, it's going to go around the right side. So which side does it go around? And this all comes from the idea of the double slit experiment. So because they have no model for what light or light is, they can't explain the light particle wave duality. Can't explain it. They put a detector in. Of course, they can't explain light at all. So they're calling photons a half a photon. They're talking out their bunda, as we say in Portuguese. They're talking out their behinds. I mean, it's quite striking. And then when they go and put the detector after, the philosophical arguments that they come up with are something that is just absolutely absurd. It sounds like Harry Potter world again. And this is how we know science is in crisis.
Yeah, well, you didn't get into too many details there, okay, except the accusation they don't know. Yes, I agree they don't know. But yes, the idea of using one of their special magical black boxes, it's not much difference than them saying, I'm going to solve the single slit mystery by creating a double slit box and testing the single slit box, right? Now, we already know that they don't know how the double slit works either. So we already know that box is bullshit. So you can't test bullshit with bullshit. And that's the real problem with this eraser experiment is they've already established a bullshit box. And once you put the bullshit box in, who knows what's really happening?
Because these people, actually, this guy stands here. He's got a 14.5 minute, and he says, "Oh, by the way, this is all going to sound crazy. Let's just see the video we talked about before. This sounds great. This is on a scale of 1 to 10, in my opinion. Quantum eraser experiments are 10 in ridiculous. Absolutely. So if you read some of these articles and watch some of these videos.
Yeah, well, like I said, the real problem with them is they're statistical experiments. And so, again, it's like the original entanglement experiment, the, what's his name? I don't know why his name always, and it hasn't been repeated since like 1980. So he does an experiment in 1980 and nobody else does it, which is kind of amazing. But it deals with the whole Bell inequality. What the hell is his name? His name is ironic in a sense because it sounds like something. What the hell? I don't know why. I can never, these name things have always been a problem for me my whole life. Names. All right, well, it doesn't matter. But the idea was he sends, millions of these photons through, and he's going to measure the photons that get through. And it was all about polarization filters. And so the whole experiment is dependent on their assumptions about how polarizing filters work. And so I sort of pointed out that a polarizing filter, if you just analogize it to jail bars, and you say photons have a way of getting through if they're it's like a frisbee. So if I throw the frisbee flat, it won't ever get through any of the bars. It's impossible. But if I throw it sideways, it will get through. But if it's a little bit sideways this way, it won't get through. So that's a polarizing filter analogy. Well, the problem with that analogy is some, of the ones that are the right angle actually hit the bar. So I throw some perfectly vertical and they hit the bar and don't get through. So statistically, it's not 50-50, right? I mean, all the ones thrown horizontally won't get through. And some of the ones thrown perfectly won't get through. So you see where if you have an assumption that it's 50-50, well, that assumption is wrong. And so then if you base your mathematics on your wrong assumption of what should have happened, well, no, it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have been 50-50. So if you're comparing it to results that were based on a wrong assumption, your experiment is flawed. And clearly their assumptions dictate the veracity of this experiment. If their assumptions about how these things work is wrong, any one of them is a little bit wrong, the whole thing is just nonsense.
Watch people talk about lectures, especially. These people go around and lecture this stuff. That's weird. They will say that some of the conclusions they've come up with is that because one individual, we can't have every individual seeing something differently. So there's a collective consciousness of beings. I'm seeing, I think I'm collective consciousness of beings. And those people and those beings will decide in some detector way, because we're detecting it by looking at it. Because plants are the same as us, as the same as detectors, which is not true, and I'll get to it. Then we have these amazing things like the reason that photon went in this direction, because there's beings with the ability to observe, and the collective consciousness of those makes that go around. Now, if you're a person like a new age kind of person, energy, then more power to you. But right now, what I worry about and the science woke people worry about is the actual physicality of really what's going on. So let's start looking at, let's get rid of this guy because I can't get this anymore. And I'm going to show you a place where you can look. I think we may take a look at this. I'm not sure, but my dad has here on his channel. You go to, I'll just type it in here, youtube.particle.guru, no com, youtube.particle.guru. You get to the Particle Gurus page, my father. And on here, you're going to find playlists. And on here, you're going to find one that I just actually made right before this, because he didn't group them in this way, but he has something on the double slit. And I'm going to stop it here. He talks about it.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, he talks about it in a way that is basically conceding their assumptions instead of rejecting their assumptions. Their assumptions are wrong about photons having there being waves of something, and that they convert into some sort of magical, not any one place thing. So just ignore their assumptions and explain the experiment. Don't try to explain it in their jargon. Let's see. Feynman, I'm just reading some of their chatter. Nothing. I have several of his books and found him to be totally entertaining, even though I don't know all the sciencey jizzly. Yeah, well, whatever. I don't know. Feynman's pretty direct, so I don't know how you can't really follow along with some of it. So it's day saving that this is literally based on nothing, just sort of guessing. Well, that's tricky to say exactly what his gripe is. His gripe is I think he would argue too, he would agree with me that their assumptions going in are just as baseless as the conclusions they've drawn, because they always draw conclusions based on silly assumptions. All right, philosopher, question mark. Did science and physics boot these people? Whatever that. I understand you. These guys are now #1 propaganda. I feel sick watching their black hole crap. I try not to let them get to me too much. That's Craig Stewart, who may have one time been a commenter here, but not anymore. Yeah, for a good reason, no doubt. But anyway, so we're still stuck with nothing here, I think. That's right, nothing. All right. Oh, we might as well play some more.
With that, you take a look at it. I think he's got one of these slides, and just by look at his videos in general. Let's see here. There it is. I'm going to take a look at this. Okay, I'm got it on mute, so let me see if I can go to his solution to the wave particle duality. And actually, this is, I think there's even a better one.
Oh, dear. Yeah, so that was a good example. So he thinks a photon is made out of 1 million of these little bits of stuff. And that's why it makes a wave. So one photon, in his understanding, is a whole bunch of these, whatever they are. G2 things? I don't know. I guess he thinks they're G1 G1s? They gotta be G2s. How could they be G1s? They'd be bigger than electrons then. I don't know. It doesn't make much sense. But he's forcing photons to be waves. So he's just basically creating a huge medium full of, zillions of these things inside of a photon. Photons aren't something made out of variable little bits. Photons behave as if they're all exactly alike. They don't behave like I have 1 million or I have 500,000 or I'm a 3/4. No, they don't behave like that at all.
I think it's in this one. Nice the diagram. I apologize. What I'm doing on the flies here.
Yeah, sure. Kind of just blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, okay. Here we go. This one is part 4, light dispersion. And this is the solution.
Right. And so you can sort of barely see it, but it's there, this wave thing. So they've turned the wave into a bunch of little lines of intensity. And so it's just how many of these little extra dots. So one photon would be a whole bunch of little dots. And the little dots are like, there's a lot of little dots here and less little dots here and then more little dots here. So it's like it's a whole bunch of little dots. And there's no evidence that photons are dependent on something like that. And how would the dots stay consistent? And how couldn't they get all messed up? And the amplitude would get all fucked up because there'd be too many dots in the wrong places. And it's just horseshit.
I'm going to explain it to you in the best way I can. In our book, I have a picture of this in our book we're writing. It's in its 3rd revision. We never publish it. Well, some people have some versions. Here's the solution to the wave particle duality. One solution. In fact, the only solution I've ever seen. And here's what you can.
So again, the only one he's ever seen. I don't believe that's the only one he's ever heard. It's the only one that he cares to think that's worth listening to.
Think of it as gravity and light. So gravity and light, according to the experiments we see, arrive at the Earth at the same time. So when you look at an eclipse, at the actual gravity effect of an eclipse arrives at the same time as the light of the.
All forces move at the same speed. All the elemental forces. So all light, gravity, magnetism, the nuclear forces. They all move at the same speed. It's the speed of force, not the speed of light.
Eclipse. And those two things, therefore, would travel at the speed of C. And therefore, we have a conclusion if it travels at the speed of C, then it must be the same particle. And that's what the particle model says. And in that, basically...
Not a horrible conclusion, but you need more than that. Okay, it's good evidence, in my opinion. Physics 100 years ago should have said, when Maxwell discovered that, they should have said to themselves, shit, this is reason for unification for sure. And they didn't do that. Instead, they made it all fucked up and had bent space and wavetons instead.
Gravity, there's 2 ways you look at gravity. If you turn your shower on and it's just random particles, that's just the pressure that's hitting you. It's like just push on your shoulder and I just push on it. No change, just a push. That's what gravity is. Light, on the other hand, is when you turn your shower on to shower massage pulses. So the only difference between light and gravity is that the light comes in groups. And if you look over here.
So again, it just turned it into a medium, right? Obviously, water is a medium flow of something. And, and varying the amount of it. And you can't vary the amount beyond you either have it or you don't have it. So all the frequencies of light can be perfectly created by just moving the bits away from each other. You don't need to make the bits bigger and smaller to create frequency. You just move them further apart from each other. So he's still thinking about trying to make light into a photon, in the frequency into the size of the ton. So, a red piece of light would be this shape, and a blue piece of light would be this shape. And, so you're just changing the shape of the thing rather than just doing the obvious thing, which is a cannonball or a bullet, and just saying, no, the bullet has a distance between them. I fire the bullets fast, I can fire the bullets slow. I fire them slow, that's red light. I fire them fast, that's blue light. So it's just a fundamental difference in our definition of what a particle model would be. So again, he's turning it into a stream of BBs, and there's like 1 million BBs in the photon, and it's just way too complex for what the data indicates.
We made it into something extremely idealistic, because over here on the right side of my father's slide, he has a bunch of lines. Basically, they're just sort of lines representing, you know, groups of stuff. We think it's much sort of more random like that. It's not perfect, but if you were to line things up, they're like bombers. So if you have waves of bombers in the sky, those waves are going to hit you, and hit you, and hit you. That's what light is. Light cannot be therefore one particle photon. It's got
So it can't be, he's saying, when of course it can be. It can just be a cannonball. It can be airplanes at a frequency. No need to create a whole bunch of airplanes, a width of airplanes. You just see the frequency between the planes.
got to be a plurality. That means it's got to, for light, the difference between light, there's a reason you feel heat from it, is because you're getting, you want to fatigue something and break something. If you want to break something, I can take like this, and I can keep bending it, that's going, and that's like hitting it. Now, if I just do this, that's what gravity is. If I keep doing this, well, it's hitting it in waves. So if you look at these diagrams, you have waves of particle.
So obviously you didn't explain gravity by saying gravity is this. It doesn't really explain why things move into each other then. How does this create movement? So that's, you've already broken your own analogy by taking all the energy out, because you're saying the amount of energy depends on some kind of size thing when it depends on the amount.
So they come in frequencies. So if they come in, so it's like those are waves.
Oh yeah. No, nothing like that. So again, he's just no need to turn photons into waves. No need to create a medium. No need to do any of that. You can explain every phenomenon associated with a photon by just recognizing that the frequency is the distance between the empty space, nothing between the tons. It's a perfectly suitable, it fits all the mathematical equations, it fits everything, and that's the whole reason why they called it that's why they call it quantum, is because the idea of quantum is quanta. That means a discrete amount. It's kind of saying physics is Plancke. That is, it comes in clumps. That's famous Feynman language. Clump, 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 clump. That's what quantum mechanics should mean to you, is clumps.
And those can be, and you know what's really funny? In the digital world, in fiber optics, that's exactly what we do. We use light, and we say it's in waves, but no, we're using light in waves of particles, and in our mind.
Yeah, there's no waves of particles. So again, in photo optics, fiber optics, they're just reflecting the light off the interior surfaces. It's a bunch of internal reflections. So as long as you keep the angle sharp enough, you don't go directly into the, so the tube is this way. As long as you don't shoot light through the tube, you shoot it at high angles, it'll keep reflecting internally and none of the light will leak out. So that's how fiber optics work. And that's why they slow the light down, is because the light has to travel a very long path because it's reflecting off the interior surface.
Oh, and so we literally send pulses. It's the same thing. That's the answer my father came up for the wave particle duality. Told him, and 2 weeks later, he came back and he says, "You're right, Gabe. I did solve that. I didn't know that."
Yeah, well, it didn't. It's not solved. He's not going to answer the 5 million questions regarding why that fails, why you can't pulse this like it was a stream of water. There's no water pulsing device. You don't have any explanation for what's pulsing your photons. So horse shit.
So that's the difference. So you can't have a photon. So let's go back to entanglement. Let's see if we can go here. Quantum entanglement. And if we go back to quantum entanglement, where they started explaining how one particle knows what the other particle is doing. Look at this stuff. It's just amazing. And it's all predicated on the idea that when they shoot in this laser, we shoot this.
Yeah, I haven't read that page. I ought to go to the entanglement page just to get a good pile of bullshit, right? Because it's got to be made out of so much bullshit. Alan Aspect. So that's the guy's name I was trying to think. So it was kind of coincidental. It's an aspect, like aspect ratio and stuff. There's lots of, it's kind of a photo optic word, aspect. And so that's kind of funny, but I can never remember the name, right? And the experiment's never been redone because the Allen aspect guy apparently had some super spinning mirror thing, that his own technology that nobody else can use, something like that. So, it sounds like a pile of horse shit, right? I mean, the guy claims he can shoot a photon over here, and at 12 meters, not very far away, 30 feet, he can detect exactly the same photon. Pretty bold claim, I'd say, on pretty weak evidence.
These particles, or these photons, that are shooting us a lighter photon, whatever the heck that is.
Again, it's not lighter. It's at a smaller frequency. So he wasn't that unclear. He said a less intense photon, and they used the word intensity and frequency synonymously because of the de Broglie bullshit. So to them, frequency is intensity, even though technically, you can understand that, yes, if you're shooting the cannonballs constantly, all right, then and so there's always going to be cannonballs fired. You can understand that in a certain time frame, that if I shoot them fast, there'll be more in that time frame. So that amount of time will have 10 cannonballs in it. But if I'm shooting the cannonballs half as fast, then I'd only have 5 in that time frame. So you could say that, the 5 cannonballs are less intense, but the cannonballs themselves aren't less intense. If they were bullets, they wouldn't be less intense. It's just you've increased the volume because you can get more in the same amount of space. So putting more in the same amount of space doesn't mean they're more intense. I mean, cute rabbits, right? I could have one cute rabbit and it has a certain amount of cuteness, right? And I could put 10 cute rabbits in this, in the space, and there's 10 times more cuteness. But you don't say that the rabbits themselves have 10 times more cuteness. There's just 10 times more rabbits, so there's 10 times more cuteness.
Both go into the 2 slits, and they both know about each other. They're entangled because it's really a photon, and somehow they split it. What we say,
yes, there are 2 separate photons that are entangled. So again, they're not being as bad as you're implying here, but yes, it's an idiotic notion because they have absolutely no evidence of this ever existing ever. So it's just horseshit, made up horseshit. All right, hello, my name is, I don't know, something, I don't care, Ragonal. I don't care. I'm not that interested at all. I'm not interested at all.
Particle model,
zero interest.
Is what we would say is that no, what's really going on is we're sending waves of particles. So they're particles that are sent in waves. And when you get to a detector,
and that's exactly what you're doing. You're creating a whole bunch of particles and turning them into something in the medium. Essentially, you're creating a medium of particles and then just adjusting how dense the medium is. So you're just doing exactly what they're doing, which is the wrong answer.
Sure. And I'm going to go to that now. I'm going to come back to you guys. I know you're asking questions, so I want to get this done. If I go to playlists and the double slit, we go to the double slit experiment with detector. I'll explain to you why. We can explain why.
Okay, so this was a stupid video because he accepted the fact that they actually did this experiment when they never did the experiment. The experiment has not been done. No physicist is stupid enough to think, I can detect where the photon went through. I can shoot photons at photons and have the photons bounce off. Nobody can make a photon detector. No physicist would do it if he's pointing the detector, like he shoots the photons this way and he has the detector here and just says, I'm going to detect the photon, because it has just as much chance doing it this way. The only way you can detect the photon is put the detector here. That's the only way you can do it. You put the detector here, you can't detect the photon. Impossible to do. And the physicists know that. They're stupid. They're bullshitty. but they're not stupid enough to attempt to make a detector that detects horizontal, photons perpendicular to the detector. They know they can't put a detector up and then watch photons go this way above the detector. They know they can't do that. They're not that fucking stupid. They know they can't make a detector and then shoot a laser beam across this way and say, I can see the laser beam with my detector. They know they can't do that.
Things change from a wave to a particle. So here's ours. We have a bunch of particles come in waves. They actually go through the slits. The slits, here's the way you think of the particle model.
So the particles come in waves, which, again, just horseshit. We know the experiment's done with single photons. So, again, they're just turning a single photon into a wave-aton again. They're making exactly the mistake that regular physics did, which is turning photons, making them the complicated thing, when every bit of evidence indicates the photon is the uncomplicated thing, and the complicated thing is the matter you're shoving the photons through. Oh, how many times can I say that? I mean, isn't that a point that everybody could agree with? That simple logic and general understanding would tell you that every experiment indicates that photons move in a straight line from point A to point B in a straight line and at a constant speed. It couldn't be a constant speed if they moved a crooked line. So we know they move a straight line from point A to point B. And there's just no evidence that they do anything else unless matter fucks with them. A matter has to. They can't shoot photons at photons. They can't shoot magnetism at photons. They can't shoot gravity at photons. They can't shoot anything at it and make it change. There's no physical experiment we have done that indicates photons can be bent in their course, except by hitting an electron. That's all we've got as evidence. And there's no evidence that photons are a bunch of stuff. There's every evidence that they're a discrete thing, a clump, and that you change where the clump goes. And again, this is Feynman saying this wave notion is a wrong notion. Feynman directly said they're particles, they're clumps.
Everything works like gravity, everything. So the G2 particles, the G1 particles.
So again, it's kind of a silly, wrong answer. Everything is magnetism and charge, the thing he's eliminated from the universe. Everything isn't gravity. Gravity doesn't create repulsion, does it? There's no repulsive gravity. So clearly, gravity is an example of one part of magnetism. It's exploiting one phenomenon of magnetism, not the other. So it has something, it's not doing both. But you can't have something, gravity can't make attraction. So that's where your big flaw is in this nonsense. The illusion of attraction. I mean, the illusion of repulsion.
Just call them photons or electrons or whatever you want to call them. You call them just G1 particles. Just G1 particles. G1 means the particle that goes at speed of light. It's gravity, it's light, it's electromagnetic.
All right, right. So he's saying photons are a million of these little things. So one photon would be like a million G1s. And then one electron, I guess, would be a gazillion trillion of these little things. And somehow the electron doesn't keep moving, though. So it's not going the speed of light. So these G1s that are in the electron are somehow not going the speed of light somewhere because they're doing something else that he doesn't explain. I mean, and then somehow when these G1s going, this million of them hit the trillion of them, then somehow the trillion million goes somewhere and does something. I mean, it doesn't have any, there's no, you can just say to yourself, well, what if it's only a half a billion? What if this is only half a trillion? What if, you can't make it out of something more granular, because then you'd have to explain how electrons are always the same. You can't have a half electron, can't have half a photon.
fields, it's magnetic fields. It's all the same because they're all traveling at the speed of light. So if you're sending those in waves, you're going to get, what happens is you're going to get patterns here. What's going to happen if you send them, even if they're just like a laser light, what's going to happen when they hit those slits?
So they're essentially arguing in favor of the argument that somehow infrared light is less intense, because they're saying the light is the bulge of particles. So if I have, well, that would almost go the opposite way, wouldn't it? I mean, it's almost wrong answer again, just because the blue light is the one that's smaller. So how come you get more energy in the smaller package and less energy in the big package? How does that work? Yeah. Why don't you explain that one? Seems backwards to me.
They're going to bend out. They're going to fan out. Why? Because in our model, you can't just have magical things happen. That there's another level down. Think of these as
these all sound like kind of magicals.
A gigantic thing in a galaxy, a gigantic structure in galaxies that's the size of planets. And these comets are going through. They're going to go through the slit. Those slits have gravity, but in our case, it's a gravity one level down.
All right, so now it's a gravity one level down. So he's saying that the photon is affected by gravity. Essentially, that he's agreeing with them. So he thinks there is gravitational lensing, that photons are bent by gravity, and that it is gravity, a level down gravity. So it's a different kind of gravity. So let me think. All right, so photons aren't affected by gravity, but they're affected by undergravity. So somehow the material bits are affected by two kinds of particles, these G particles and then the G2s, which are little smaller ones that move twice the speed of light. And somehow the little ones are pushing the photons. And so when they're pushing the photons, it means they're taking littler BBs. So they're taking like grains of sand and shooting them at the copper BBs. That's the photons. So the grains of sand are being shot at the BBs and moving the BBs. And the grains of sand, just by miracle, happen to hit every single one of the BBs, and they hit every single one of the BBs only once, so they all move at exactly the same angle. So two grains of sand don't hit the same BB ever, because then the BB would move too wide an angle. They're all spread out. Right? Yeah. No, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, the G1 particles, you can move up to comets, and then our G1 particles in our solar system is what makes gravity happen. So if I'm sending these comets through this gigantic slit that has gravity, they are going to be deflected.
By definition, it's not a gigantic slit. It's supposed to be a very small slit. So by definition, it's a very small slit, which means there's a high likelihood of going near a surface. And as I've tried to point out, there's no such thing as a surface in nuclear physics, right? No such thing as an atomic surface. Maybe everybody should be able to agree on that. There's no such thing as a material surface except for the elemental bits like the electrons and the protons. They have surfaces, but everything else doesn't. There's no surface to a galaxy. The suns have surfaces, the galaxy no surfaces, right? And the suns only have surfaces in a metaphorical sense, right? Because we know they don't have a surface either. They have a whole range of surface. There's sort of a little sun here, a little more sun here, a little more sun here, and then it gets really a lot of sun. But there's no surface of the sun.
Now, that's how our particle model works. If you put a detector in, not a plant, not a banana, not a human, they put in a detector. Guess what the detector has? It's made up of G1 particle field. You turn on the detector, it's got electromagnetic field all around it, which are G1 particles, so you can interfere with it. Doesn't matter where you put it.
So now he's saying just the idea of making a photon detector, you've created a field which changes the photons. Well, we already know that photons aren't affected by electromagnetic fields. Magnetism will not bend photons. So it's really not a fear. You know, you can turn on all the electronics you want, and it shouldn't bend the photons at all. So that's a bullshit explanation.
Now, I'm not here to preach to you that the particle model is the best, even though it is, and it's the greatest thing. I'm not here.
Yeah, whatever. It's crap. And you're obviously afraid of having your crap scrutinized.
To tell you that. What I'm here to tell you is this is a model that we know. From what I can see, it's the only real solution I've ever seen with.
Right. And so now another vague, veiled reference to everybody else is full of shit because I know what I'm talking about. So he's basically admitting that most of the nutters in his tinfoil hat club don't have an answer that's correct. And yet he's selling them. He's selling their answers on Thursdays. And on Wednesdays, he's dissing their answers. And on Thursdays, he's selling their answers. What kind of bullshit is that? You either call a spade a spade. Just admit to yourself, you don't think any of those other tinfoil hat nutters have the right answer. And you're claiming you do, which is the same thing I'm doing, which is basically saying, yeah, I got the right answer. They happen to all be full of shit. That's the way it worked out, right? I'm smart. They're not so smart.
Particle duality, and that's what our model is based on. And then when you look at these experiments, they're all that.
Oh, he's just such a hypocrite. Such a duplicitous hypocrite. Anyway, because that's another good thing about the Franklin guy who does their discussion room. I mean, he admits it. Yeah, I think I'm right, and I think all the rest of you fuckers are wrong. That's what we're all doing here. We're all sitting here saying, I'm right, you idiots got it wrong. I'm trying to convince you that you fucked up and I didn't fuck up. That's the obligation. He gets that. Anyway, comments. Yeah, look for my comments. 2 hours. Well, we've gone more than I thought I would. All right, let's see. Hello, I don't care. Do you not cray for your viewers? Oh, good. You not give short. Do you even read? Then chant hello. No, I don't do any. All of whatever you're asking, the answer is something like fuck you. That's probably the right answer. God, where do these idiots come from? How do they get to my videos? Spooky. Spooky creep at a distance. Spooky creeps at a distance. I don't even know. So this guy, Sahab, E equals MC squared. Yes. That's relevant how? Matter is compressed. So yes, it's got energy in it because it's compression. Compression creates the potential for movement. Okay? Pressure, high pressure is potential movement. Low pressure, not potential movement. Yeah, there you go.
When you shoot, what they think they are shooting a photon, they're shooting photons, if you want to interpret a photon in the particle model, are groups of G1 particles.
Yeah, so again, it just intuitively, that's just like saying, oh, fuck physics, you're just dead. Because we're going to turn everything into Horton Hears a Who world. It's little dots all the way down. Lower. No, it isn't. And there's no evidence of that. Again, it comes in clumps. That's Feynman's words. It comes in clumps. He wrote it on the blackboard. They come in clumps. He actually wrote that. They come in clumps.
And so that's what's happening. So when you sent, there was a guy, he's a photonics expert. Who's that?
Corpuscles, as Feynman also said, using Newton's language. So Newton used the word corpuscle.
That's a person who studies photons their entire life. He was at a conference, at one of our conferences once, and this is what he said. He stood up to all of the science woke people and he said,
doesn't really matter. All kinds of people with all kinds of credentials say all kinds of crazy shit. You have that Bill guy in your group who's a conspiracy nutter, believes in God, and he has a physics degree. Spooky.
Here's what he said. He said, this is what we know of photons. He goes, remember, I've spent over 30 years studying photons. This is what we know. somewhere in the universe, something releases a photon. How that happens, we have no idea.
They do have ideas. They're wrong, but they have ideas.
A photon is, we don't know. But
they have some understanding. As Feynman said, it's clumps.
Somehow that travels through space. How does that happen? We have no idea. It gets to our detector, and that photon triggers our detector. And how does that happen? We have no idea.
So that, again, is just horseshit. They have every idea of how to detect photons. They understand there's a relationship between photons and electrons. They create a device that has pressurized electrons, that is, electrons ready to be tipped, and they allow them to be tipped by a photon. So that we know how to do. It's not a photon amplifier. It's an electron amplifier, but it's a chain reaction device, as is our eyeball.
Why was this guy a critical thinker?
Well, our retina.
In our conference, a conference that was talking about the Big Bang's wrong, relativity's wrong, particle physics is wrong, quantum mechanics is wrong. Why was he there? Because he's a true experimentalist. And he knows that he has no physical model for any of this.
So he has no physical model. That's his problem, isn't it? He lacks deductive skills then. Because it seems to me the more evidence you see, the more experiments you see, the more you can nail this down. And what has been nailed down by all the experiments is that photons travel from point A to point B in a dead straight line at a dead constant speed unless they hit an electron. That's what we've nailed.
So that's the problem with quantum mechanics. There's no physical model. Therefore, the double slit.
It has a silly model. So just put it right. They have a model, but it's silly.
Experiment can't be explained. With a detector, even less. And then they go off on philosophical journeys.
Again, the detector thing is just a red herring. There's no detector. It's not a rational experiment. It can't be done. It's just silly to talk about it. They're just assuming if it happened, we wouldn't be able to do it, and therefore Heisenberg is right. So it's just a fake proof by just saying that if we could do the experiment, it would prove Heisenberg is right. When they can't do the experiment, and therefore they can't prove that Heisenberg is, in fact, wrong. Because they can't do the experiment.
That make you scared. I would be embarrassed if some advanced civilization came here.
Yes, I'm embarrassed by all of you people. I'm embarrassed by them. I'm embarrassed by you. You're all incredibly embarrassing, in my opinion. You're all full of shit. You're all playing little games. Look at this video. 64 views, 16 thumbs up. 16 thumbs up. 0 thumbs down. So he's obviously just spamming his own videos, just propagandizing. Here, it's propaganda. I'm going to fake the system, fake the system. The system is broken, granted. Break it some more. So instead of fixing broken laws, you'll just break the law to do the right thing, right? That's your justification. They do it, I'll do it. 2 wrongs make a right, right? You can't figure out that 2 wrongs don't make a right, and you're going to preach physics.
Heard or even read about this, even when they looked at entanglement. So, anyways, let me go back here. I can see, I'm sure I got lots of people. Okay, I appreciate you guys all coming here. And I'm going to go through some of this and read it a little bit, see where we're at. I'll go back here to the quantum racer.
Let's understand, he's also bought subscribers. He's paid for boost the numbers. So it's like, yes, I have to get fake credibility. And yes, it is a dismal medium. It's rough out here, but cheating is no good.
Experiment and see what you guys are saying. I apologize. I just want to get through that. Okay, the fellow, hey, appreciate it, piano man. Hey, piano man. I was raised on classical piano. I can play a little bit, but it's a little bit out. So I'm sure you can play way better than me. Hello, David. Hello, Craig. Nice to meet you. Looks like you're a friend of Lisa's. You hearing me? Yes. Oh my gosh, please not. Yep. I listen to PBS and NPR. I can't listen to the politics on NPR because it's so biased and they pretend not to be. I can't. I'm a progressive. Bernie Sanders, Jill Stein. But regardless, vote for somebody who cares about us, not the corporations. But regardless,
No, that's a lie anyway. So like they care about us. That's a joke. Hilarious.
When you listen to these things, it's really almost impossible for me to sit through Discovery Channel or these types of videos because I want to kill someone at the end because it's so far out. let's see, nothing, a shadow color. Okay, fine.
And likewise, emotion. So again, he's basically saying that nobody should have that reaction to his tinfoil hat liars. So his tinfoil hat propagandists who say insane, stupid, silly things like, yeah, the entire world is conspiring so we can't read the books of Ponquier. No, some bizarre fucking truther looper duper theory. And we're not supposed to be pissed off. We're not supposed to say, who are you fucking talking that shit to? Why are you selling something with such a preposterous lie that all the librarians have a safe in the back room where they hide all the government books, the books the government says nobody can read? They actually have them in a safe. I mean, fuck you. But no, I'm not supposed to be pissed off. I'm not supposed to want to whap that guy in the head and say, don't be lying to me, cunt. Sell your shit to somebody who wants to hear it full of lies. If you have to lie to defend your theory, then your theory sucks.
Yes, and I hope you're done. So as I look at the YouTube video, link to laugh out loud. It's when stuff sounds like it also, yeah. Observing photons with photons, of course, would change the propagation path. Yeah, I think Feynman made it clear that in one of his early lectures. Absolutely.
Yes, again, like I said, nobody fell for it because nobody did the experiment. So again, let's just not talk about this stupid detector crap because it never fucking happened. And certainly what never happened was unplugging the detector. So they never did that either. They never plugged the detectors in the first place, and nobody ever unplugged them and say, look, it still happens because the photons think the detectors are still on. Yeah, none of that crap ever happened.
Like Feynman, he said something that you can keep on creating with math to prove a point that could be an issue. Verify this, of course. Yeah. Alrighty, I'll claim I understand. Okay, nothing. It seems at least all right. Okay.
All right, we'll move ahead. This little, this is worse than me reading comments. He's just jabbering through them like they're not even
before they call it physics. And the reason we do that is so that we go back to when we think the science wasn't screwed up, which is basically 1905. Who was that, Mr. Albert Einstein, and his inventing and imposing rules upon the universe? In my article. That's fine.
Whatever bullshit there. So we have a couple of comments I might respond to. Are you going to do the microwave experiment? Yes, the guy is going to do it. I haven't heard from him lately, but he's out there. He's got the microwave things. He's got the equipment, sort of. I mean, it's a little bit of a complicated experiment if you don't realize how the microwaves are actually produced. They're not produced by some separate device. Yeah. I'll let the machine have this one. I mean, I guess I could moot the ring. Probably could.
Hi, this is Gary. I can't get to the phone right now, but if you leave your name, number, and a message if you like, I'll get back to you.
Oh, yeah, I can moot the mic. All right, I think that worked. Let's hope. Business and such, selling the property, blah, 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 blah. People coming to see it, blah, 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 blah. Irritating. Incredibly irritating. Horribly irritating. All right, so yes, the microwave experiment will get done, but so the complication with microwave is that there's a diode inside the mechanism, and the diode's actually creating the high frequency, the gigahertz vibration. And so the problem is the detector is always frequency dependent. That is, when you buy one of those specially made shaped things, it's detecting the microwaves with the diode. So it automatically vibrates at only one frequency. So you can't, it's not detecting the energy of the signal. So there's no way to break essentially the notion, there's no way to detect jamming. So again, what we're really trying to do is find out when signals have been jammed. And I don't know why I'm talking to the microphone. So you can't do that. Well, it doesn't matter if it's my image, it can't be seen anyway. There's no way to detect the microwaves by the standard way. So you have to create a separate kind of antenna that just detects the voltage of the microwave signal. And the danger with that is that you're creating a lot of microwaves then, and obviously that's not too healthy to be exposed to a lot of microwaves. So that's where the high frequency experiment sort of fails, and I'm thinking of maybe going to the lower frequency one, which is safer, but you need a bigger space to do it in, like you have to do it outside. But anyway, just pointing out, it's a little more complicated than originally I assumed, in terms of complicated in that it's a very frequency dependent device. The earth is flat. Okay, well, I've told people if you say anything about the flat earth, you're just going to get blocked. So you're just going to get blocked. It's a waste of time, waste of words. Just, you want to play little games because you're a little tiny dicked, useless sack of shit. Who wastes their time with this? God is round. I mean, should I waste neurons? I should waste your neurons by saying something like God is round. Why would I say it? What use is it? It's garbage. It's nonsense. It's a waste of everybody's time. Crop circle, crop circle, crop circle. It's a waste of everybody's time. Time wasters are evil. You're evil. Asshole. All right. God, these people are just so fucking stupid. All right, some other link to crap. YouTube. That effect are those items creating that alter the apparent location of background stars. What does this mean? What effect are these items creating that alters the apparent location of background stars? What effect are these items? What's an item? I mean, just more crap. Crap, 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 crap. All this will be is crap. This is the tab for I don't know what. So, well, we'll just do this. Probably will work. Paste. Yeah, it probably won't work, Gary. Yeah, you probably have to put video in there or something. Yes, it didn't work. I have to go to a YouTube video. I'll go to this video and pop out this watch part. Oh, he doesn't have the watch in there. See, that was really interesting. Stupid sound effects. Stupid time codes. Time code didn't work. The more magical musical fun. It isn't it doesn't scream to you bullshit when somebody has to put all this fucking gay music and everything behind everything. It doesn't automatically just say to you, oh, this is going to be just a piece of propaganda. I mean, come on. You should know better. Be fooled by this crap. What was his time code here? Find his fucking time code. Chat. time equals, I don't know why the time code didn't work. 688, unless your video code is some fucked up in some way. Jeez. Oops, I gotta put the time after question mark time. Put it back on there. And we'll say go there. Go to the time code, fucker. Still didn't do it. So I don't know. We'll try 600 minutes. That ain't gonna be the right place. So these you're saying are somehow a real thing, UFO. So it's a UFO site. Yeah. So great. Yeah, so whatever. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, maybe I'll. I don't know any of the context of this bullshit. I would be skeptical of its source by its very name. So why should I'm not going to take this as a serious source. So come up with a serious source for the phenomenon. That is somebody who's got a paper somewhere or something where conventional physics is arguing this, but I'm not going to argue truth or theories and nonsense made up crap. So come up with better data. This looks like a waste of my time. Sorry. Colossal waste of my time. Yeah, the volcano camera broke. It's really irritating. They haven't fixed it yet, the fucking cunts. All right, what do I need? I need this is the wrong page. I need back this way. David D. Hilster, I think, is somewhere around here. There we go. All right, let me see what other comments there are. I probably should get the hell out of here. Nothing else but that crappy link. Okay. So anyway, look, look, Chicken Little. You really think I have time? Every wacky UFO site, every truth or free energy site, I should have to go debunk all of their propaganda. So besides trying to debunk the propaganda of conventional physics, I should spend all my time debunking the propaganda of every tinfoil hatter in the universe. And, you think that's fair cop? I'm trying to defend one theory against one theory. Conventional theory against my theory. That's my objective here. I'm trying to point out how my theory is so much more rational than their theory. And the evidence points to my theory in so many more ways than the evidence points to their theory. That's my objective. And seems to me you're just saying, I want to fuck with your objective. Yeah, fuck you. No, thank you.
No, I can know all of this. I understand you. These guys are number one propaganda. I feel sick watching their black hole crap. Yeah, it's pretty sad. Tried to read a universe from nothing, but I could not get my head around it. I'm alive now. Yeah.
All right, universe from nothing. So yes, so somehow it's easier to conceive of a universe that always was than a universe that is created, when both of them are equally. How the fuck? Both of them leave you with nothing. There's no, whatever the beginning was, once you find out that's the way it was, you'll say, okay, that's what the universe does. The universe was all nothing, and then an error happened, and the universe created a universe, and the universe was created because of an error. If I show you a videotape, that's what the universe does. That it's a conveyor belt of nothing, for just nothing, and that it's imperfect. So sometimes it fucks up, and something happens rather than nothing. You'll say, okay, that's the answer. You won't have a choice, but that's all there's going to be. The answer is just going to be more crap. The answer is going to be a lousy answer. The answer is not going to be something brilliant. God did it. Wait a minute, who made God again? I mean, there's no other answer. There's a dumb system that does dumb things. That's all there is. There's no other thing. There's no smart system that does dumb things or smart system that does smart things. There's only a dumb system, and all it can do is dumb things.
Okay, let's keep going here. Nothing is as seems or trend. Shenanigans of science very wide open. Nothing as it seems. Alrighty, guys. So I'm going to just keep going here. what I want to stress to you is to pull back again one more time, and that is quantum mechanics is been taken over by this double slit experiment, which has been neglected because of it doesn't have a model for anything. In fact, the standard model is a
well, again, the history is just laughably bad when you think about it. Because Newton already did the single hair experiment, which I didn't even know, but he'd already taken a hair and created the pattern. So in a sense, you know, there's just no doubt who came up with this first, because that creates the bars out, obviously. So I'm just saying there's Newton's rings, which is obviously the single slit experiment done round. But clearly, once you do the hair experiment, you've cut the Newton's rings into a bar pattern, so you've already done it. And there was absolutely nothing miraculous about the Young experiment. It was actually an incredibly unmiraculous experiment in the sense he didn't even use collated light. He uses sunlight, and the images were just suns, and it wasn't monochromatic, and it was a lot of things. Completely unremarkable as an experiment, and yet everybody thought it was remarkable. When Newton had already done the single slit experiment, and he already done the single hair experiment 150 years earlier. I mean, it's just such horse shit.
Joke that they call it a model, because there's nothing a model about it. I've explained that to people again. I'm going to do this. I'm going to look up quarks. I'm going to talk to you. I forgot to talk about one other thing.
Why do this? So why confuse two subjects? Why start talking about quarks? There's no point in talking about quarks when you're already talking about entanglement and an eraser experiment. Why don't you just stay on something reasonable instead of going into quarks? Waste of time.
The picture of a quark. Here's a picture of a proton, I believe, an up and then two ups and a down quark. You know, these are gluons. They glue them together. This is how little we have of a model. We don't know what the size of them are. We don't know what the shape of them are. We say that a proton is round, but how could it be round if it's made for three other round things? And what are gluons to keep it together? And in fact, Dr. Bill Lucas, who knows some of the best particle physicists around.
Well, the way it can be round when it's made out of round things is the same way I could make a wheel out of three prongs. And as long as I spin it fast enough, you won't feel the bumps. So, you know, if we could make wheels, you know, that could spin fast enough, that is, you know, it was practical, we wouldn't have to have round wheels. We have wheels that are just spokes. And they'd work fine once you're going fast enough. They look round. So obviously, if that little thing is spinning, it'll look round.
I guess they've already looked at the data and said that the strong force doesn't exist. Now, how does certain models you can read and look at Jeff Yee, his model?
Well, obviously, I don't think most of them are saying the strong force doesn't exist. So blah, 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 blah. I'll say bullshit to that. But again, the strong force is an illusion because it's actually an incredibly weak force in the sense that it's the absence of pressure is why if you assume the protons are being compressed into each other, then it would take a lot of energy to push them that close to each other. But if your assumption is wrong and the protons aren't being pushed into each other in the sense that the relief valve is an electron who's letting all the energy out, so there is no pressure between the protons, then you don't have any energy in that nucleus. It's much weaker than you think it is. So in that sense, the strong force doesn't exist because there is no proton explosion force. The proton strong force isn't what creates a nuclear reaction. Pretty much. It's the force of the neutrons. The neutron's the key element, not the protons. The neutron's the thing that contains the electron that's providing the relief valve.
The energy wave theory, you can look at this model. You can also look at our model. We don't have quarks. We've thrown them out. We don't know what what is there. So
we don't know what's there. We don't say anything. So fine. So no model versus some model. Yes, I'd say they're both probably not hitting the mark. But some model is at least an effort. So give them an A for effort. We'll give them a D or an F for propagandizing and selling it as the truth.
Anyways, this is the state of modern particle physics. The standard model, and there's nothing in it that's a model, because to me a model has to be physical, and there's nothing standard about it because they have anywhere, it depends on who you talk to, 19 to 23 free variables. What does that mean? 19 to 23 knobs, which they can turn so that they can make the model work the way they think it is. And the biggest thing they worry about is what they call symmetry.
Well, I understand that, yes, the idea of creating a dark matter button is really bad. Okay, that's kind of evil. So, but some of those constants are pretty reliable constants.
Which is, if you got a positive, you got to have a negative. If you got to have, anti-quark, you have to have quark and an anti-quark, and photon and anti-photon.
Yeah, whatever. All that stuff seems to be just the mathematical stuff that doesn't account for anything. So there's absolutely no accounting for the fact that you need more room in the car. If you have all the anti-people in the car, there wouldn't be enough room in the car, right? You have 4 people in the car, but it's really 8 people in the car. Oh, yeah, no. So, yeah, it's all kind of bullshit because they don't have any role for those antis to play. They all just somehow don't do anything until you want to see one of them. Then you can find one of them. But otherwise, they don't do anything, which is idiotic.
This goes on. So, concerning the atom, is it possible that they're all linked to atoms, or that all linked to atoms are? I'm not sure I'm understanding. Nothing. Lance, can you maybe say it again? It says it seems concerning atom. Yeah, probably. I'm sure maybe you speak another language, no problem. So I'm trying to get your English there. Is it possible that all linked atom or dipoles? Okay, you want to talk about dipoles? Let's do this. Here's something you guys should see.
Oh dear. So now he's going to try to sell the idea that there's no poles, there's no charge. The entire phenomenon of electricity isn't a real phenomenon. It's just a stupid argument.
YouTube, now the new. One of the aha moments of my life. I don't know.
That sounds like the wacky bullshit that if you spin 2 things this way, the things push apart, and if you spin them opposite ways, they go together, which doesn't mean a damn thing because that force is incredibly weak, and completely dependent on a medium. It has nothing to do with magnets smashing into each other and magnets repelling. Just absolute nonsense.
3 of those in science. One was with Lionel Deneau, one was with Glenn Borkert, and the other one was my father, very practical reality. So Lionel Deneau, one of the great physicists of our time, he's an etherist, and he had
so he sits there and argues for a particle theory and then says, this guy's great with his ether theory. Can't be both, Dave.
Has these most amazing videos around, let's see, radio waves, let's see, let's just go to his playlist. Okay. Here we go. You want to know what magnetism is? This is what it is. This is our model. We explain it actually in a...
So this is what it is. It's this spinning bullshit. Spinning crap in a medium. So he talks about a particle model, and then he spins crap in a medium and says, this is how our model works. Particles don't do this, especially particles that somehow aren't glued to each other. So go ahead and spin 2 things in a bucket of sand and see how far you get.
In this experiment, we're going to start motors, which are going to rotate the cylinders in opposite directions. Let's see what happens. Start motors now.
So look how weak this is. Nothing. There we go. Incredibly weak force. Incredibly weak.
So this blew my mind. When I saw it, it was one of the greatest revelations I think I've seen in science. What's happening? He's showing that fluid around some object going in opposite directions causes attraction. So what does that mean? That magnetic fields, electromagnetic fields, are flows of particles.
All right, so we already know that. I'm just saying, how many times, show me one experiment, one single experiment that illustrates movement around a magnet. That if I put a static magnet there, you will see this flow. They're saying a ton of stuff is flowing around the magnet. Some kind of stuff. He has a particle theory. He's saying they're particles. Well, why can't I put anything in there to detect that flow? When I can't. Nothing. I can't drop anything, a piece of styrofoam, and have it move with the current. Nothing can move with a current. The only thing I can do is shove another magnet in there, and it'll position itself exactly proportional to how much energy is hitting it. It will not move. It will not flow. It will not do anything a piece of dust would do if I threw it in that tank. It won't in any way duplicate what's happening in that tank. In no way whatsoever. I mean, this is just such horse shit. And do that experiment with a big thing and a small thing. So take two things that are different sizes and then see how fucked up it gets.
And my dad and I, in our book, it took us 2 years of hacking the universe. But I'll get to that. Let me see here.
Yeah, even having a name like hacking the universe, like hacking is a good thing when we know hacking is shit. It's the bullshit solution is the hack. You want something hacked. You want it done right for a change, not hacked. Their answer to Einstein's answer is a hack. Quantum mechanics is a hack. Those are the cheap explanations.
Hacking the universe. We actually can explain that what's going on using the poster. I wonder if I have my poster here. Let me see. Poster universe hack. Oh, look at that. The amazing G1 particle. It is a poster. And here you have particles that are going around and around and around. And those particles go in opposite directions. They cause attraction. And
right. In the magical medium that you say doesn't exist. So in the ether, you don't have an ether, by the way, David, just pointing out. There's no ether in your theory. You have no explanation for how those particles can do all that going around and around thing. Your G2 force creating some kind of superluminal gravity wouldn't explain it. So, I mean, it's just horse shit. But again, there's just no evidence. Show me some way. Show me a piece of evidence where they put a magnet down and then they can create some kind of micro or nano or some kind of tiny thing and detect there's actual flow, there's actual movement in a direction, because there isn't.
Go and collide with each other. It calls repulsion. So that's what he's showing here. So if you want to know what magnetic fields are, let's just keep going. Let's go and show.
So look how easy it was to separate those things. Anything like a magnet? No, nothing like a magnet at all.
We see them attracting each other again and sticking to each other. Let's start the motors.
They're obviously not sticking to each other. They're obviously sticking to a low pressure area created by both of them. They're creating a low pressure by shooting everything out in one place. So everything's converging from the underneath. So if they're spinning the same way, they're creating low pressure because they're shooting everything out at a high pressure above them, because all the little molecules are stuck to each other. All the particles are stuck to each other in a fucking ether, a medium of some kind. The very thing he says doesn't exist, and yet he's recreating it out of particles that are somehow stuck to each other and transmitting tension to each other in a way where they're can create high pressure here and low pressure here. And somehow we can't detect that, though. The magnet's doing that, and yet we can't detect it at all. And yet it's doing it so well that the magnets push into each other with incredible power. And yet we can't detect any of that super flow. Bullshit.
That they attract each other.
So again, they don't attract each other. They're just moving into the low pressure created by the fact that all the flow is going in one direction. If you push more stuff out fast, if you push the stuff out faster, then the stuff coming in has to accelerate. That creates a low pressure. All right, it's probably enough. I don't want to spend my day doing this shit. 3 hours almost. That's way enough. No rational comments still. So fuck you people, as usual. Thanks for your useless contributions. I'm like not thanking you, doing the opposite of thanking you. So anyway, let's see how many viewers there were just for the hell of it. Saturday mornings might not be a great idea. 13, that's about average. Doesn't really matter. 13 idiots always seem to show up. Unfortunately, that's all I can get so far. All right, so I have to just wait for a better audience. Just a fact of life. Feel I can make one somehow, but right, I can't make one with the truth. That's clear. So that's disappointing. But who knows? I can only do my part of the job. My part of the job is to open the room, suggest anybody who wishes to participate in some sort of civil and irrational manner is welcome. And that's all I can. I can only provide you the opportunity. I can't, lead the horses to the water and all that kind of crap, and I can't force them to drink. But I sort of could. But horses are easier to manage than people, and that's part of the problem. I can force a horse to do lots of things legally, but you can't force idiots not to be idiots. Yeah, unfortunately, even if there was a law that says it's okay to force them not to be idiots, there's no method to force them not to be idiots. I mean, I can't fix idiocy with a snap of my fingers. I can just make logical arguments, just point out how push is a much more rational idea than pull for an elemental force. If you had to pick something that was going to be your elemental function, making a pull machine, I'm giving you a choice. I'll give you $1 million to make the machine. And wouldn't you like it better if I said make a push machine than if I told you to make a pull machine? Yes. I think you would. All right. But anyway. Fuck.